It's the How to Shoot How You podcast discussing topics around photography, videography and running a business. My name's Jules. It's just me this week. Kieran's got some family stuff going on, so I'm going to do this one on my own because I wanted to keep making sure there was an episode coming out, and it's been a couple of weeks since I put one out. So on this episode, I'm going to be talking about the DJI Pocket 3. I talked about that about 10 episodes ago, and I want to talk about it in this episode in a little bit more detail because I've used it a little bit more now, and I think I've got a more in-depth perspective to offer, and some other stuff to do with equipment. So if equipment and gear stuff isn't your bag, you might not want to listen to this one. But if you are into the gear and you are looking for, options to enhance your shooting from a kind of tech perspective, this is going to be a decent episode to listen to. So, what's been happening in general? My summer season, wedding season, has officially started this last couple of weeks. So it's really weird because I've had like quite a bit of commercial work as well going on. It's gone from literally end of December to end of April, nothing going on. I had a couple of weddings, an odd shoot here and there to do with, more commercial type work, but very slow, not much going on. And then this last couple of weeks, there's been multiple weddings. There's been people contacting me for different types of shoots, working with educational institutions, medical professionals, charities. It's just been proper full on. And like, you wouldn't have known that this work was there before. And I think I'm kind of talking about it, and I want to mention it because it's a crazy job, this. You have such a quiet period for a few months over like the winter. And it's pretty seasonal for us all, wherever you are in the world, whichever part of the world you're in, whenever your summer season is, or your kind of like spring to autumn season is, that's usually when all the work is. And winter tends to be quiet for us all, especially if you're doing weddings. But even the commercial side of things tends to be seasonal. I think that, there's certainly something to do with budgets and, the year end when it gets to April, March, and April starts here in the UK. All of the kind of commercial type ventures, all of the businesses and the organizations, they start their financial year fresh. It's the end of the tax year and all that. So it's almost like everybody kind of decides they're going to do stuff all of a sudden again after not doing it for a while. So it can get quite busy. So you have all this quiet time, and then all of a sudden there's all this work to do. And it's a topic for another time, really. Me and Kieran will probably cover it in another episode. But getting the balance of like setting the boundaries with making hay while the sun shines is a genuine struggle. I think it's a struggle for all of us. And it probably always will be, as self-employed creatives, especially those of us that are working in the wedding industry. It's something we're always going to have to deal with. And even sort of 7+ years in, I'm still, shocked when it's so quiet and then all of a sudden it's so busy. And I kind of, what I decided to do these last few weeks is I was kind of happy with where I was. In terms of financial goals, I'd met them all for my financial year, which would end at the end of August. So I was like, well, I don't really want to take any more work on. I'm quite happy with where things are. I don't want to give myself a more difficult situation by taking more work on. But I just thought, do you know what? I feel like I'm in control because I haven't got a backlog at the moment, and I should just take it. I feel like to be busy would be better. I feel like being quieter over the last 4, 5, 6 months has not really suited me. So yeah, I've just started saying yes to stuff, and we'll see what happens from there. But anyway, that's kind of the general what I've been up to. So let's get on to the kind of topic I wanted to go into, which was talking about the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. So, I mean, as a bit of a context, there'll be if there are hardcore purist videographers listening to this, they will not think that that is a good tool for wedding filmmaking or commercial filmmaking. That is not. It doesn't cost enough. It doesn't have the tech specs to be enough, and it doesn't look the part to be a proper filmmaking tool. Now, I could go into that kind of attitude all day long, but I won't on this episode. I'll just sort of say that I get it. It's not intended as a professional, high-level filmmaking tool. That being said, would you say that a Sony a7S III is a high-level professional filmmaking tool? I mean, it's not a, 50 to 100 grand cinema camera with like a, you're not going to be putting a 10 grand lens on it. So actually, you could argue that just like the Sony a7S III isn't a professional level filmmaking tool in terms of, comparing it to a huge cinema camera that you might shoot a Hollywood movie on. But they do use those cameras in Hollywood films, and they do use them for filmmaking in lots of contexts. So I do think at this point technology has to be viewed in the context in which it is being utilized. The outcome that you're trying to get should play a part in choosing the tool to get to the outcome. So whilst it's not going to be the best camera, the Pocket 3 is a tool that we can use to achieve a goal. And that's where I kind of came at it from when I bought it. And that's where I'm going to be discussing it today. So even if you think the Pocket 3 is not for me because you're a purist videographer, it might still be worth listening. So I was motivated to talk about this after receiving a really nice DM from Chloe at Milk Chic Creative. I hope I've got that right. I believe she's a hybrid photographer and videographer based down down under in Oz. I won't try and do the accent. So shout out to you, Chloe. Thank you for getting in touch. And I really appreciate, we do get messages from time to time. We don't always talk about them on the podcast. But I thought that she asked a really good question. She was asking, she'd listened to the episode that I'd done about it previously, which was, I think it was episode 81. And now I've been using it for a while. She was asking, she was interested in it, and she was asking how I was kind of getting on with it. So in that episode 81, I talked about it being a game-changing camera. And that was because like the specs and the initial impression I got of it did make me feel like it potentially was a game-changing camera. I'm not going to go into kind of all the tech stuff on this. It's not what it's about. It's actually about the practical thing. But essentially, what the Pocket 3 is it's a really small gimbal. And this is just for anybody who doesn't know what it is. Obviously, if you know what it is, I'm not teaching you to suck eggs. I'm just kind of giving a bit of background. It's a really small gimbal that would be about the size of your phone. And it's essentially an all-in-one device. So imagine your camera has, your phone has the camera on it and you just hold it. But this thing you hold as if you were holding a phone, but it's got a little electronic gimbal on the top. So the actual sensor where the camera is on a gimbal. It's pretty much the flip side of a drone. So imagine the drone has the camera and the gimbal hanging underneath it. This has basically got the camera and the gimbal on top of it, and you hold it in your hand. And it does the same as what a gimbal would do, like a full-size gimbal, like a Ronin or something like that. Excuse me. But with your, instead of having this huge device with a quite big camera on top, it's just kind of really easy to hold in the palm of your hand. It's got a 1-inch sensor. It can shoot in different frame rates, so it can do slow motion stuff. It's got 10-bit color. So actually the color that comes out of it's decent. You've got like a log profile that you can use. And for color grading, the data that's there is pretty decent. You can tweak the color and the exposure quite a lot in it. Quite surprising really for this kind of device. Like you can't push it in the same way that I can push a Sony A7S III file, but you can push it quite a lot. So I got it when it came out. I've used it on about 10 weddings and a bunch of like commercial and personal projects. So like I've used it quite a bit. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in it. I haven't like got 10,000 hours in this thing, but I've used it quite a bit, and I've used it in different ways. And I've used it quite a bit in the way that I would intend to use it from a hybrid perspective or from like wedding filmmaking. I think the best way to summarize it is it's not perfect, but it really is a game changer in terms of what is going to come after. If like they've created this thing now in 2023, 2024, and that'll have been developed a year or so, maybe 2 years ago, then in this year or next year, we'll have something that you could literally replace your whole setup with. That's what I believe. I believe that if we've got that now, that what's coming next from DJI is something that replaces your Sony A7S III on a Ronin, whatever gimbal, Ronin RS3, RS4, whatever you want to. I think it's possible. Whether they'd do that, whether they'd cannibalize their own products by giving you the full shebang at a really great price, maybe not. But I feel like the technology's there already. Obviously, they've got their own Ronin 4DS or whatever it's called. That's like a really kind of good camera on a dedicated gimbal arm. That's not. They don't want to cannibalize that because they want to sell that. But I mean, the Pocket 3 is such a good piece of kit. I don't think it's perfect. Personally, I can tell the difference in the footage, the codec, bitrate, characteristics of the footage. It's all a little bit different to what comes out of my Sony cameras. That doesn't surprise me though. Like, it's not going to be exactly the same. We're not talking the same sensor size. We're not talking the same codecs. We're not talking the same color science. We're not talking the same processors. I mean, there's so much technology inside one of the Sony cameras, and obviously there's a cost difference. It's a completely different cost difference. This is a device that's got the lens, it's got the camera sensor, and it's got all the processor, the computer, the screen. It's all in this thing that costs like 400 or 500 quid, and it fits in the palm of your hand. It's tiny. And then obviously like the comparison, if you take a Sony A7S III, that's, I think when it came out, it was $3,500, and you need to attach a lens to it. So you've got like a few hundred quid to a few thousand quid in glass there. Of course, that is going to produce something much better than this little handheld thing. But if you look at the price difference and compare them, I'm not sure that the correlation in difference of quality is the same as difference in price, if that makes sense. And the only reason like I say it's different is because I can tell. Like, I know that the footage that comes out of the two things are different. Would clients know that? I'm going to be honest, I doubt that. I doubt that they would. Not unless they're videographers or filmmakers or photographers, editors, people that work in kind of the visual creative industry. I mean, let's be honest, we use drone footage all the time, and the drone footage is going to be very similar to what's coming out of this camera, because they're essentially, it's DJI that are making the drones, it's DJI that are making this thing. They're going to be using the same gimbal technology, the same sensor technology. So there's not going to be an awful lot of difference. The way that the images are processed, they're going to be very same. So it's essentially, if you're happy to use a drone with the same size sensor and the same kind of processor and everything that's in there and the same color science, then you're getting the same footage. So mixing the footage in from your DJI Pocket 3 with your film is the same as mixing in the drone footage with your film. And yes, it's going to be of slightly different things. You're going to notice things a bit more when there's people quite close up rather than, just landscapes or whatever from a distance. But it is essentially the same thing. So if you can mix in your drone footage, then you can mix in this. I think you can match the footage in pretty well in terms of color correction and grade. I've done a few tests. I did one direct. I did a couple direct, but I did one in particular direct where I literally had the gimbal and I had the DJI Pocket 3 held next to each other and did the same kind of shots at a wedding. I did kind of 4 or 5 of the exact same shots to compare them directly and tried to match them up directly. And I think that they were almost the same. They weren't 100% the same. But then again, I didn't spend all day trying to match them up. And I'm not a professional colorist, but I think, even with quick tweaks, I did a decent job of matching them up. So I think you need to turn down the sharpening, and I think you need to make sure you get the white balance and the exposure as close as you can to the other camera and to the kind of conditions as you can, because I don't think you've got as much leeway as you have with something like an A7S III or one of the other, proper cameras like a Sony camera. And I think that the white balance in particular is slightly different to, let's be honest, I can use a Sony A7 IV, a Sony A7S III, Sony A1, like those 3 cameras I use all the time, and the sensors all produce slightly different colors out of them. They're slightly more magenta, slightly more green, typically, and I have to do a bit of correction on them to make sure they match up. So it's not really surprising that out of the Pocket 3 you'd have to do the same. The stabilization is great for general use. If you put it on top of your camera, like your proper camera, as like a second angle, and you're kind of moving it around, it's great. If you're using it on its own, so you've just got it in your hand, it's a little lighter than I would like. It's kind of, I'm used to carrying the original DJI Ronin S, and that's the gimbal I've got. I haven't updated it. It still works. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So that's quite heavy, and especially heavy compared to some of the newer ones. And I'll be honest, I find that quite a nice, it's heavy to carry all day, but it's a nice weight in terms of getting a nice smooth motion. And I think that the Pocket 3 is way too light to get the kind of fluid motion that you would like from a gimbal move. If you're kind of trying to do like a pan and tilt type move or a parallax or anything like that, it's really hard to do it. But in terms of like holding it still, walking back and forth, side to side, the movement is stabilized really well. How am I using it? So if you're doing hybrid, it's great for sections of the day where things are happening at the same time. So example, like I was just saying, if you put it on top of your camera, so you can get a little hot shoe attachment for the bottom of it, screws in at the bottom, put it on top of the hot shoe, or if you've got a cage on your camera, put it on the cage of your camera, fasten it on however you're going to do that with your cage, let's just say on your hot shoe, which goes on really quick, so you can put it on in seconds. And then what you've got is you've got this extra angle. You press record, you can mess around with the joystick that's on top of it to kind of frame it properly. There are different settings that you can set the gimbal, so like it will either do like an FPV style, so it'll tilt and it'll pan and it'll kind of roll at the same time, or you can kind of tilt lock it so that it won't move around as much, or you can do like a follow motion. And once you kind of figure out how you like to use it the most, in terms of if you, let's say for instance, you've got your camera, your stills camera, and you're taking photos, but you want that to mount that on top of it to be able to get video at the same time. Once you kind of realize how you like to hold your camera, how you like to move your camera during shooting, you can get your setting right with those stabilization movements. And then you kind of use the joystick just to reframe it a little bit. And then you press record and you can easily shoot photos whilst recording the video. And you get it really nice and smooth. Even if you're moving the camera around a little bit, you're not getting any jerkiness. You're not getting any like rapid motions that you can't smooth out in post or anything. It looks really stable and it's capturing it as it is. And you can even like use a joystick to kind of move it off in a different direction. So you can kind of be recording something whilst photographing something else in a different direction, which is quite cool. And what this does is, because it's quite a wide lens as well, it captures what's happening in the room. So certainly if you're trying to get more documentary style coverage, it's perfect for that. It's also great to get, I should just go back to why you would be doing that. So for instance, at times like first look with dad, first look between bride and groom, or bride and bride, groom and groom, first look with bridesmaids, anything that involves where you need to be filming and photographing at the same time, but it's not possible to set up separate cameras and things like that, or have a second shooter. This is a great option. It doesn't deliver the same cinematicness as if you were like on a tighter lens. And if you're the sort of person that shoots 85 all the time when you're filming, you're not going to be able to do that and take photos at the same time. But this is going to give you a wide of the room. So it means that you capture moments that are important with photo and video at the same time. And when you're providing a hybrid service, that's pretty much what you're trying to do. You're trying to show a documentary style of what is happening. It's also great to get a different perspective on the same shot if you're just doing video. So if you are tight with one lens, let's say you're on an 85 or you're on whatever, you're much tighter focal length on the action, but you also want a wide shot of the same thing so that you've got something to cut to, then that works great. And then it works well if you're going into a walking shot. I'll give you an example. Tracking backwards down the aisle from like a exit or a confetti shot or something like that. You've got like your main camera. You might have like your lens on that might be quite tight and you're getting quite a close-up of the couple. They're walking towards you. But it gets to a point where you've got to either track back or you've got to move out of the way. And if you are handheld on that device, or if you're on a monopod or whatever it is, you're going to lose it. Like you can't keep a stable shot on that. But what you can do if you've got this on is it's basically giving you the opportunity to carry on filming it on a wider shot, but you're still capturing it. So it means that if you do doc edits like I do, you can literally track back or you can pan away as they walk past you, and you can deliver the full thing. Like they still get to see this continuous thing happening rather than you having to cut it off because, well, I just moved around and it looked horrendous because I was wobbling all over the place. So that works really well. And you can use that in lots of different parts of the day where you're going to have to move around, but you want to kind of keep that continuous shot going. And if that's not, that's not everybody's style, but my style is to try and deliver as much of the day as possible. So it's really helpful for me. Another thing I love is the vertical mode. So even though it crops into the image rather than like flipping the sensor around to vertical, it basically keeps the sensor horizontal, and it just crops in to give a vertical aspect ratio. So even though it does that, the image is still good enough. It's still high enough quality to use. So this is great if you want to use for BTS content while you're at your jobs, like filming kind of let's say you're a photographer and you want to be able to do vertical reels from your wedding. You might use your phone and you might mount that on top of your camera. Now, there's two things. Most phones are quite big and heavy. Two, stabilization, even though it's got better, is not perfect, especially if you're going to be just moving around and especially in low light situations. So that's not going to be great. So if you're trying to get like video shots whilst you're taking the photos, that using your phone is one way. Using this, I think is a much more professional version of that because you're not just using your phone. And B, the footage that comes out is going to be way better. It's going to look smoother, it's going to look slicker, and especially in low light situations, it's going to be so much better quality because the stabilization's done physically rather than in post-production software. So that's kind of something to consider. I've used it in doing jobs where I need vertical and horizontal. So let's take a wedding. If you want to film it because you're trying to deliver a proper wedding film, a horizontal aspect ratio, but then you want some vertical content for your socials or whatever, and you don't want to have to kind of reposition and crop all of your horizontal footage, so you have to shoot a bit wider, you could just have this on top and you could be filming key parts of the day in both vertical and horizontal simultaneously. I haven't really done that yet, but where it works well, where it's worked well for me is done some commercial jobs where they were expecting both vertical content and horizontal content. So I did horizontal content with my actual camera, and then I put the DJI Pocket 3 on top and did vertical content with that, and didn't even have to do much editing to it. Literally just chopped the start and the end off, and it was there because I basically framed it with the joystick as I was filming it, and it basically captured the thing as it was, and I just focused on doing the horizontal footage with my actual camera, and it caught the vertical stuff, and I could just deliver that straight away without much editing. So I think that was for me, that's a great workflow move. I've done a few tests on recording over a longer period of time, because another use case, I guess, for this is that you could technically use it as an extra angle for whatever you're doing, even long form stuff. So imagine a ceremony, speeches, that sort of thing. You could use it as an additional angle, maybe a third angle. I mean, you could technically use it as a second angle if you really wanted to, because it's got this nice wide image. So if you've got one camera that's your main camera, and then you were just looking for a really simple, cheap option for a second angle. I'm not saying you should do this, by the way, because I don't think that's what it's intended for, but you could get away with it. I might use it as like a third angle in a ceremony or speeches. And I think that's a great move, like a wide that you can cut to, so that it's almost like a safety cam. And the great thing is you can actually use an app to reframe it. So you can get the DJI Mimo, I think it's called, app, and on your phone it will give you a live preview of what it's seeing, and you can actually reposition the reframe it live time by just using the app on your phone. So you could like pan round and tilt the camera remotely from the other side of the room, which could be really handy if you're shooting solo and you're trying to capture certain things. And I'm not going to say it's going to give you the ultimate best quality, but if you're just trying to have a second angle to be able to cut to while you reposition your main camera, it's possible. So I did some tests for the longer stuff, I've recorded for over 45 minutes on a few occasions now, for test reasons, not necessarily from a live perspective. Did it at 25p. So it'll be fine for most occasions for like an additional angle. 50p FPS, it got a little bit hotter quicker, which you'd expect. And I've still had like 20 minutes plus before it shut down with 50p FPS. And you're not going to be filming long things in 50 FPS, I don't think. Warmer conditions, it might shut down. It's not been out long enough for me to use it through the summer months or outdoor ceremonies. I've got a few outdoor ceremonies coming up, so I might just put it out, even if I'm not using it for that. I might just put it out just to test it, because it'd be good to see how it fared. I'd be interested to know and feed that back. But yeah, other than that, I think it's worked really solid. So my assessment of it is, and again, you can go on like loads of reviews and loads of websites and stuff and read about all the tech specs of it. But I'm giving you like a real world example of using it as a hybrid shooter or a wedding filmmaker or wedding photographer. It's a great tool. It's not replacing my main cameras, but it's another great piece of kit to utilize amongst the other bits that I've got. You know, I think I could film a full wedding on it. I'm not gonna, because that's not kind of where I am in my business. I'm trying to produce higher quality stuff in general, but I think you could use it, to film a full wedding on if you had to. Just like you could probably film a full wedding on iPhone 15 now. But that's another topic altogether. But it's a great tool to use for certain things like I've been discussing. And in terms of like the size, weight, stabilization that it offers, the price point that it's at, it really doesn't, you can't rival another rig with it. Like you couldn't get another rig that could do the same thing, that would be comparable. Like, if let's just, an A7S III has now been out for about 4 years or something. You get that on a Ronin, and that's like, in a lens, and that's like a $5,000, kit. That's a $5,000 rig. And this thing costs 500 quid. So it's a tenth of the price of its competition, if you like. And yes, the competition's better, but it's not 10 times worse than a Sony A7S III. Let's put it that way. So if you want the best, go for the best. But if you want something that gets the job done and clients won't tell or care, because, they want to see great video, most of them are not going to be, did you film this on a DJI Pocket 3? Doesn't look the same as this thing that you filmed on a Sony A7S III or whatever. So it's totally an option. And that's why I think it's perfect for hybrid, because if you're doing photo and video at the same time, this thing's going to save you so much time. I mean, imagine like if you want to get a walk-in shot. So I'll give an example where I've used it. If you want to get a walk-in shot of a couple that's got some motion in it, so there's a little bit of a pan and tilt into the shot as they're walking, and you kind of like getting them walking towards you, maybe getting the confetti shot. But you don't want to have to bring out the full gimbal, and you don't want to have to have an extra camera mounted to the gimbal, and then you've got to do all this stuff, and you've got to hold that while you're taking photos and things like that. This thing, you just pop it on top of your camera while you're taking photos, tracking back with a couple, and you're getting the confetti shot at 50 FPS. And that confetti shot, because you're quite close to them while you're shooting it, is really good. And it's totally not, they're not going to know. It's totally usable. You can cut that into your film. It's going to look great. So that's why it's great for hybrid. Oh, I might have rattled on a little bit more than I thought there. What else can I talk about? I thought I'd mention another camera very quickly. The Insta360X. Now, I just bought the X3 about a month ago. The X3 has been out a couple of years, 1/2-inch sensor. 5.7K, I think it is. I had the Insta360 X1, and back end of last year, I did a behind the scenes using the X1 camera. Haven't even managed to put that together yet. I'm hoping to do that soon. But I recorded this behind the scenes on it, and I was going to put that out. And I've seen the footage, and I just thought, I'm going to do more behind the scenes this year. I want a slightly better version of this camera. So I've been putting it off. I thought they're going to bring out the 4 soon, the X4 soon. But it got to the start of wedding season, and I wanted the X3. I wanted to be able to kind of have a play with it before I'd start shooting weddings. So I bought it. Literally a few days later, they bring the Insta360 X4 out. I was pretty gutted, I'm not going to lie. But I bought the X3 by that point. I'd opened it, I'd used it. So I didn't feel like I could send it back because I'd kind of been using it. So my thoughts on the footage from the X3 is that it's great. I did a behind the scenes of my last wedding. I've seen the footage from it. I think it's much better than the X1. I think that, it's a good tool for what I'm using it for. So what I'm using it for is to be able to capture behind the scenes stuff. Partially, I'm going to put it on the camera, on top of the camera, in a similar way to I've been describing the Pocket 3 really. Put it on top of the camera so that I can get behind the scenes footage, either vertical or horizontal, of what I'm shooting. And then I'm going to be able to share that. So I might use it for some social media posts, as well as making YouTube videos so that I can share educational stuff with you guys of how I shoot weddings. So I did like a wedding film last weekend, and I did the full thing all of the day. I was pretty much recording on the X3 to get behind the scenes, explaining what I was doing and showing what I was doing, and what you will see behind the actual wedding film. Now, the X4 footage, the X4 that just came out, from the review videos that I've watched, it does look better. I'm not going to lie. The footage looks crisper, it looks cleaner, it looks nicer. Excuse me. But that camera's like 500 quid at the cheapest, and I got the X3 for 380. So, yes, I would have waited. Had I known it was coming out, I would have waited and bought that one, spent the extra money. But I'm not going to go back now and sell the X3 and buy the X4 just for that extra bit of crispness. Not right now anyway. Because for me, the main use is going to be for that behind the scenes content. Now, I have bought it for other reasons too, because I do other types of content creation. I do other types of photography and videography. So I initially bought the X1 because I thought I was going to do more stuff to do with like 360 photos of kind of like virtual tours, 360 video, because I thought there might be certain quirky uses for that in a content creation space. And I think that now more than ever, there is a good use case for that. Not necessarily at weddings, because I did think I'd be able to use it at weddings in a quirky way. Because it doesn't necessarily look cinematic, but you can get some nice looking footage out of it that looks good for commercial reasons. Like if you're doing a virtual tour of something, if you're doing a walk around of something, 360 camera works really well for that. And because I'm doing increasingly more commercial work, I think I'll use it more for that. And I actually think I might eventually buy the X4 because from what I've seen, the footage is so good on that, it's kind of jumped up a notch that you could actually potentially use it for more uses at a wedding. I mean, originally I had this whole idea that people might actually want to see parts of the wedding, like the ceremony, in 360. I've never really pushed that, but it's not a crazy idea. It's just probably there's not a huge market for that, and I'm trying to put my chips where I'm more likely to win, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the 360 camera. Again, I'm just mounting that on top of the camera usually, or on a little clip on my bag strap, so that you get that behind the scenes. Hopefully those videos will be out in the coming weeks, and you'll be able to watch those if you're interested in seeing how I either film or film and photo a wedding. What else? I bought a new drone. This one's an interesting one because I had the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. I've had that since, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe. And it has done me so well. I had the original Mavic Pro. I got the Mavic Pro 2. And then I crashed the Mavic Pro 2 at a wedding into a tree. It fell a long way out of the sky. I thought there's no way this drone's still going to work. I managed to rescue it. It's a really funny story, which I won't go into now, but I managed to rescue it. And then it turns out it still worked. And I've been using that drone now for about 2 to 3 years, and it has never missed a beat. It's got all sorts of issues with it, but it's been working just fine. So that's what I've been using for all my films for the last 2 or 3 years. But it was just starting to concern me a little bit of like how outdated it was and how it might just stop working at some point. So I just thought, I've been wanting to get a new drone for a while and just holding it off. And I thought, surely the Mavic 4 is going to come out sometime this year. And I just thought, you know what? It doesn't even matter. Like, I don't need the best of the best. I don't need the brand new thing. I just need something that's going to work really well. And so I got the Mavic 3 Classic. I didn't need the sort of version that had more than one camera on it, you know, more than one focal length. So I got that. It's absolutely brilliant. It really is. I got it secondhand, an eBay special, and I've been so happy with it. I've used it a couple of times for weddings now, and it is just a real step up, as you would expect. But it's been out for a couple of years, you know. It's not new technology. The new version, the Mavic 4 that probably comes out this year, is going to blow it away. But compared to the thing that I have been using, it's great. And I got the one with the DJI RC that's got the screen built in, so I don't have to connect my phone to it. That is like next level stuff as well. So yeah, and I think I wanted to tell that story because you don't have to get the brand new best of the best of the best. Like, this will do me now. I know it will. It'll, just like my other cameras, you know, I'll want to buy new cameras as they come out. When the new Sony A7S comes out, when the new Sony A1 comes out, I'll want to buy them. But do I need them? Probably not, because the cameras I've got are doing a great job, and this new drone is nuts for me. So yeah, if you are kind of looking at that sort of thing, obviously I've bought that rather than one of the minis because I've got my qualifications for drone piloting and things, so it just makes sense for me to have a bigger, better drone, and then I can use it for more purposes. Like if I've got some commercial jobs, you know, the quality is better on it. It's more stable in the air when it's windy and things like that. So it just means I can use it for more stuff. It's got more versatility. So yeah. And that is kind of, you know, where I am with what's been going on this week. I've been basically getting my kit up to date for the last few weeks and then starting the weddings. And that's all I've been doing, really. I've just been shooting either commercial work or shooting weddings, and I've really, really enjoyed getting back into it, if I'm being honest. It's been nice. So that's it for this one. I hope it's been useful to hear about the experience with the Pocket 3, and if you're on the fence and have the money, as a hybrid shooter, I think it's a great addition. Even as a filmmaker, I think, you know, it's something that you can use in some different ways. And that's the thing, like when I first started out, I was using equipment in unique ways that other people weren't. And I feel like that actually gave me an edge. And I feel like I'm going back to that now. I'm letting go of this is how we're supposed to do things. And I'm just going to do things my own way and just stop worrying about what other people think or what is the correct way of doing things. Because I feel like when I was just trying stuff out and being a little bit, you know, innovative with it, that's when I was doing the best stuff. This week's song of the week from Musicbed is I Just Love You. And it's by the band Willa. It's a great short folky styled singer-songwriter tune. It uses the fantastic 4 chords. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Essentially all songs, a lot of pop songs use 4 chords in different ways. And that's what usually makes a song really catchy. It sounds really friendly because of that, and the lyrics are really nice for a wedding love story if you're looking for something that's got vocals. But also the instrumental version is pretty good as well. I used it on a next day teaser this week, the one I just put out, the last one, and it just fitted so well. It just worked so well with a couple, worked so well with a wedding. And it's just a lovely song. And obviously it's licensed because it's from Musicbed, so I'm not using a song that is a popular song in the charts and everything, so there's no issues with it being taken down and things. So take it easy, have a great week, and catch you in the next one. Bye.
Man, I like the way you walk, and I listen every time you talk. Can't quit thinking about your kisses. Maybe you could be my missus. You're so pretty when you're mad, and when you go I get so sad. All I do is think about you. I can't explain it, I just love you. I'm so smitten, I'm so gone, that I just had to write this song. And I know you've already heard, but I guess one more time won't hurt. I can't explain it, I just love you.